On this episode of Carnage, we've been to the dyno, so it's time to get this ute ready to race. So last week we had the car on the dyno and it made 1128.9 horsepower, 1129, 1130, whatever you want to say. It made a lot of power, okay? So it did real good. So we made, and we really have only touched the surface of this thing so far. So big shout out to Adam and the boys at MPW for helping us get this thing across the line, and they're going to help us this weekend when we take it out the track as well. Also, it's probably a good time to thank our sponsors, VPW, Haltech, Turbo Smart, Pulsar Turbos, and Tough Mounts. All right, all those companies have helped us in a big way to get this thing done. So big shout out to those guys. Buy and use their products because they're awesome. So anyway, this weekend we're heading out to Heathcote. We're going to run the ute. Adam's taking his Capri up, so while he's going up there, we figure we'll go up there as well so we can get him to log in and have a look at things. And while we're doing we're going to just step through the process, all right? So do 60-foot launch and then do like a 330 and see where the start line's at and see if the car tracks right going down the strip. In fact, it goes for a wheel alignment tomorrow, so to make sure that it should track down the strip right. That's very important to us. So we're just going to go in gradual steps, but there's a whole bunch of things that we have to do ahead of that time. I've already been working a list on our little whiteboard over here. I've dropped the oil, changed the oil, I've cut the filter open. It gave me a bit of a scare. There was a bit of golden glitter down in the bottom of the oil filter, and I'm like, oh no. I sent the picture to Adam, and Adam's like, no, that's fine. I'm like, what do you mean it's fine? I really don't like the look at this. And he's like, dude, you've got trunnion upgrades in it. I'm like, oh, as soon as he said the word, I'm like, of course. We replaced the trunnions, all right, instead of having roller bearings in there is brass bushes in there, and they have to wear in. So they send out a little bit of golden glitter right at the start. Happens with all their engines, they reckon. So I think we're good to go. People are going to be really shocked at this, but when we ran it on the dyno last week, we had no idea what the oil pressure was doing. None at all. Oil pressure sensor didn't work. Still didn't work. And you're all going to be like, you're nuts. We knew it had oil pressure. We just didn't know how much and what it was doing. But we ran it anyway. I have now solved that problem. I've installed another oil pressure sensor, this time a Haltech sensor, and I've run it through a different route in the loom. So it's running off a completely different ABI. So therefore, we know exactly what the oil pressure is doing with the engine. And I think there's just something wrong in the loom there somewhere that it's not seeing whatever's hooked to our oil pressure sensor, our normal LS style oil pressure sensor. So anyway, we have solved that issue. Let's have a look at some other stuff we've done. So I've been under here. So we had that boost pipe pop off the other day. I've made this very agricultural looking brace this morning. I mean, that is solid as. That is going nowhere. And yes, it does not look pretty. It doesn't have to look pretty. It's there for 1 week only, all right? It's there to get me down the track. I don't want to have boost pipe issues. Like, we're not going to be going full send with this car anyway. We're going to be, like, first launch will probably be 7 PSI. 7 PSI is not going to give that any dramas anyway. So, and then we might move up to 10 PSI and do some half tracks. And then maybe we'll do a 20 PSI to half track, see how that goes. And we know that'll hold at 20 PSI. It's if we ever want to push beyond 20 PSI during the day, that's when we'll get into trouble. But with that big steel brace on there, it ain't moving. A few people did say, oh, what about the engine movement and that? Well, this thing's got tough mounts in it, and tough mounts are quite solid and very firm. So there's not a lot of engine movement going on there at all anyway. So, yeah. I've got to set up my catch cans. At the moment, I've got the lines just running down into the chassis rails. Obviously, we can't race it like that. So I'm going to run lines down the full length of the car. The catch cans are off with Ben at Top G Fab at the moment. He is doing some mods to them so they can fit where I'd like them to fit. And what else do we have to do? We have to do some sensors and stuff like that, but to do that, I need the car up on the hoist. And I can't put the car on the hoist at the moment because we've got Brad from Geelong. Come on down, Brad.
How you going, Scotty?
Good, mate.
Good to be here.
Give us 2 thumbs up, mate. All right, 1.5 thumbs, that'll do. Anyway, sorry, mate.
You're all right.
But anyway, Brad's come up to give us a hand with the interior. He's found some door skins and stuff like that, so we're no longer going to have speaker holes in the doors. He's going to put the center console thing back in, which I removed to do wiring stuff the other day. And he's just going to stuff around with the car a little bit on the interior side, make it all look neat and tidy, which is, you know, we want that as well. But we're also busy doing other things, because one of my missions this morning is to machine down some spacers so I can get my wheel nuts on properly. I'll get it eventually.
Proper.
So anyway, proper like. So I need to machine these down, so I've got to go over to MPW, use their lathe to machine these down, and Brad's going to work away at the interior. And yeah, we're going to get this done. This thing is going to be race ready by the weekend, and we're going to go out and run some pretty good numbers.
Bring on Heathcote, huh?
That's it. All right, let's get to it.
Righto, because of this cage running through, VS's all had a speaker in the bottom, every single VS. Door don't close, big hole, no good. So this is a VP type door trim. A POV pack had no speaker in them at all. No parcel packet on the side, they had nothing there. So I've sort of chopped and changed to get it so the door can close with a big whopping speaker and a big whopping speaker hole in it. And that'll be all good. Then we're gonna move on to putting the glove box and everything back in. And the center console, which is pretty hard to find these days, a column auto one, but I managed to track it down. So let's get it back together, eh?
Okay, I'm back. How'd we go?
You tell me.
Let's have a look. Oh wow, that looks much better. Look at that. We have our center section and we have a glove box. Wow, I haven't seen the glove box in a while.
Putting your race clubs in. We're missing a dash mat.
Yep, dash mat. When dash mats attack, part 4. Yeah, I don't know that we'll be putting a dash mat in the car. Oh yeah, and they look good with the door trims with no speaker holes too. That's awesome.
Just neatens it up.
Yeah, that's looking awesome, dude. So cool. Car is starting to look complete. And then I've decided rather than machine down 10 nut washers for our wheel nuts, I just machined down our socket. So I bought a brand new King Chrome socket from the guys next door. So we got a tool store next door. And yeah, I just machined down the socket at MPW. So now that should, oh yep, it is. Yep, it actually fits on the nuts now, which was a bit of a problem. So now we can tighten our wheel nuts. It's very important. So massive thanks to Brad for coming down and sorting out our interior.
No worries, mate.
And we've got a socket for our wheel nuts. I guess we'll get this thing back up on the hoist and I can do the rest of the list. So Brad is headed home to Geelong, and of course it started to rain, so drive safe, Brad. He's a top guy. Anyway, so we've pulled the rear wheels off and re-bled the rear brakes, because the Willwood calipers have all the nipples. They have 4 nipples.
Oh yeah, you can milk anything with nipples. I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
And I think when I bled them before, I only bled the inside nipples, and I think it left some air in the outer part. So we have gone outside to inside, top of course, and the brakes feel a bit firmer. So it's a nice word, isn't it? Nipples. Let's get the tyres back on. So our wheel nuts are made out of titanium, race car stuff, and they're 5/8 studs. And so I'm going to use my fancy new machined socket to get them in there, but we'll wind it in by hand first. Okay, so I've got to pick the catch cans up off Ben and we can put them in. Wheel stand sensor, simple. Driveshaft sensor, that's probably handy. Shock sensor, I don't think we're going to get that in for this one. Gear position and shock sensor, I think they're later jobs. We'll leave them out for this one. But wheel stand, if we can get some data in there for that, that'd be great. And drive shaft, so we can know the drive shaft speed, and maybe Adam wants to do some, stuff with that. Yeah, and tail shaft loop. That's an important one. I think we've got one in the box over there. So I might do drive shaft sensor first. Let's have a look at that. So I jumped on the Haltech website the other day and ordered myself a drive shaft collar. And basically it's a collar that locks around the pinion yoke. They come in all different sizes because pinion yokes come in all different sizes. We've got pro gears, so our yoke is appropriately sized. So we've got a 2.125 inch collar. Right, so measure yours, make sure you're the right size. So that's got 8 magnets in it, and it will measure, well, with the help of this little sensor here, which we'll make a bracket up for. So we'll make up a bracket, we'll put it on the top side of the diff, but it'll measure the RPM of the drive shaft. And with that information, well, A, we can log the information, B, we can use it to set up the speedo, so we can have the speed going to the dash, and so the wheels are turning at a certain speed, we send that signal to the dash, we know what speed we're doing. But we can also use that data to activate things like traction control, all right? So if the wheels start turning way too fast over a predetermined curve, then we can set it up that it will pull timing and whatever and stop wheel spinning. So that's how traction control basically works. So yeah, this is going to be handy. So if we set this up today, we will get some data over the weekend and basically set ourselves up with maybe some traction control for the future. I'm not saying we're going to have it for the weekend, but it's good to get the data. And if we can get the data, then we can set stuff up for later. So I'm going to make up a bracket that will mount our little cherry sensor, that's what they call them. Little cherry sensor, we'll mount that up and position it the correct distance away from our collar, so that way we can measure, well, a drive shaft signal, how fast it's turning. We have a bracket. Right, so we've got our sensor mounted. The clearance is about well, they like between 1/2 mil and 1 mil. So I've got it just over 1/2 mil there. So it is pretty tight, but I'm not expecting much variation. I guess we should check that. Is it in neutral at the moment? Well, I guess we'll find out, yep. All right, well, let me have a look. So the sensor itself's installed, now we just need to do the wiring. So we'll whack some sheathing over this stuff, we'll put a plug on it, a bit of heat shrink, and then tie it up out of the way so it's clear of all the suspension. Yeah, and then we can run a lead down the back here and plug her in. Sense some stuff. All right, we'll just tidy that up. We'll run a wire to the ECU, or 3 wires to the ECU, and job done. So now we're going to mount some catch cans under the rear. So we've got some ProFlow catch cans, which we have modified because they're a little bit too long. They started off that size. We've gone down to that size so we can get them as big as possible, but within the space that we have. So what I've done is put some nut certs inside the panel there. I'm going to mount this one up, then I'm going to mount one beside it. So originally I was going to mount them up here, but we realised that we needed tow bar and yeah. So Matt came up with the idea of mounting them up here on the side, and it's actually a pretty good idea. So yeah, we're going to mount both tanks side by side, overlap the centre bolt, and then when we need to drain them, we can just go off that there, just reach under, put a drip pan under there, empty them out if they require it. If it fills these, I've got some serious problems, but the beauty of having them back here is they're behind the tyres. So if the engine has a puke, has a problem, has a big puke, it'll fill the cans and not dump oil in front of the tyres. When you're travelling 170 mile an hour, that is important. It takes time to slow down, even with a parachute. So having oil under your tyres when that's happening is a bad thing. So if you can keep the oil behind the tyres, that's better. So, all right, mount up the other can and then run our lines. So we had our catch cans modified by Ben at Top G Fab down there at Seaford. He does a lot of our aluminium fab. I can't aluminium weld yet, but maybe that'll happen one day. But what we've done is we've taken the breather off the top so we can get them up as far as possible, put it on the side. Yes, it reduces our capacity slightly, but you know, them's the brakes. I mean, there's going to be a lot of capacity just in the lines from here to there. So dash 10s, the full length of the car, actually have some capacity to them. So run a dash 10 line to the top, drain on the bottom. I mean, it'll hold a couple litres, so there's 4 litres plus lines. I mean, that's, you know, it's got to add up to almost the full oil capacity of the car, so yeah. Anyway, let's align this one up and mount her up. Steel nut certs take more effort. So we've got some fairly long catch can lines to run. Luckily I've got 10 metres of ProFlow's 420 series push lock hose. So that'll be enough to do both lines. Cool. Let's run them in. Just giving it a fresh end. Hassan, chop! Hassan, chop! And it's as easy as that. I mean, got enough, but put some turns in there too. How am I going to do this? So my issue is, what if one side needs more length than the other? If I cut them exactly the same, I know this side will need less length than that side. So let's run them up there and work out what we need for each side. Well, I'm glad I didn't cut them even, because basically I've got that much left. If I'd cut it right in the center, she would not have been long enough to do both sides. Wow. Huzzah, chop! Right, we'll just tie them up out of the way, but that is catch cans done, which means must be time to send this away for a wheel line.
A few moments later.
Wow, this thing is wild. Well, now that's sorted, I guess we should take it to the track now. But you're going to see all that on a future episode of Carnage.